are about 1 million Adventists in the United States, and as many as 100,000 of them have been the subject of a number of long-term studies, supported mostly with federal funds, to understand why Adventists seem to enjoy a longer life expectancy.
Established that only about 10% of how long we live is dictated by our genes. The other 90% or so is dictated by our lifestyle.
Dan Buettner led a research project for National Geographic that turned into a best-selling book, The Blue Zones. It identified Loma Linda as one of a handful of locations around the world where people do in fact live longer and seemingly healthier lives.
I was in collaboration with the National Institute on Aging and some scientists out of Harvard. They put us in touch with the people who run the Adventist Health Study, which is a gold standard NIH-funded epidemiology study that follows tens of thousands of people for decades. And that study revealed that the Adventists who most strictly follow the suggestions of the church are living about a decade longer than their American counterpart.
It is pretty accepted now in the medical community, with all of the body of scientific research that has been looking at Adventists, that they live longer than their peers. They live longer than the people who are living in neighboring towns, and even people living next door to them. The initial studies of Adventists were looking at specific things in their lifestyle. They found that because they're vegetarian, they eat more nuts. So originally we were saying in the early 1990s, hey, let's all eat walnuts, let's all eat almonds, which is a good first step, but with the Adventists it's much more holistic. It's their whole vegetarian lifestyle, which includes a lot of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. But it's also beyond that. They believe it's a strong sense of community.
Well, I'm 98 years young. I am blessed because I have a church family.
I think we're content. I think contentment means a lot.
Surviving on faith. Why does this religious community live longer than the rest of us? Our series, Living Longer, Living Better. A new ABC News USA Today poll finds almost 2/3 of Americans say it's worth practicing moderation, exercising regularly, eating properly, avoiding alcohol and stress in order to live to 100. Tonight, ABC's Gigi Stone introduces us to a community in Loma Linda, California that believes it has found the answer.
Marge Jetton got her first car around the time cars were invented. At 101 years old, she's still behind the wheel. At 94, Marion Westermeyer is still perfecting his dive. And at 91, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham is visiting a patient he helped operate on last night. All are members of America's longest living community, the Seventh-day Adventists of California. The Adventist Church was born during an era of 19th century health reform. It has always preached and practiced a message of health. No smoking, no alcohol, no caffeine, no rich foods, and plenty of exercise like daily walks. But the real secret, members say, is their faith itself.
It could be that there's something about prayer, something about the hope that engenders, something about the social support that they get.
There have been several studies to back that up. One U.S. government-funded study found those who attend religious services regularly live an average of 8 years longer. You never have enough time to do all the things you want to do.
That's right, because you're so slow, it's exasperating.
She just renewed her driver's license for another 5 years.
When I'm up like this, like this, like this.
After all, she needs to be able to get to her daily workouts. Gigi Stone, ABC News, Loma Linda, California.
We're finished.
Amen.
Hello there. I'm Dr. Matthew Chan, the new medical director of the Occupational Medicine Center at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and I'm here today to give you a health tip. The current recommendation is that we get anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes of exercise per day, about 3 days per week. That has been found to demonstrate benefits in the areas of cardiovascular disease, musculoskeletal health, and overall happiness and job satisfaction. And the good news is you don't have to do 30 consecutive minutes. You can actually break it up. So for example, I can go to work and exercise for 10 minutes quickly here on my break, and then do another 10 minutes later on in the afternoon, and when I get home, I can go for a quick 10-minute brisk walk. There, I've just accumulated 30 minutes in one day, and I didn't really have to go to the gym or set aside a significant amount of time to do so. And I can do that as many days of the week as possible. Just that amount of exercise alone will improve your health by leaps and bounds. And you'll notice an effect not only at home, but at work, and you'll be able to work healthy so that you can live the most abundant life possible.
High blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for death in the world, affecting nearly 78 million Americans. That's 1 in 3 adults. And as we age, our pressures get higher and higher, such that by age 60, it strikes more than half. Well, if it affects most of us when we get older, maybe it's less a disease and more just an inevitable consequence of aging. No, we've known since the 1920s that high blood pressure need not occur. Researchers measured the blood pressure of 1,000 people in rural Kenya who ate a diet centered around whole plant foods, whole grains, beans, vegetables, fruit, and dark green leafies. Our pressures go up as we age. Their pressures actually go down. And the lower, the better. The whole 140/90 cutoff is arbitrary. Even people who start out with blood pressures under 120/80 appear to benefit from blood pressure reduction. If you went to your doctor with a blood pressure 120/80, you'd get a gold star, but the ideal blood pressure, the no benefit from reducing it further blood pressure, may actually be 110/70. 110/70? Is it even possible to get blood pressures down that low? It's not just possible, it's normal for those eating healthy enough diets. For 2 years at a rural Kenyan hospital, 1,800 patients were admitted. How many cases of high blood pressure did they find? 0. Wow, they must have had low rates of heart disease. No, they had no rates of heart disease. Not a single case of arteriosclerosis, our #1 killer, was found. Rural China, too, about 110/70 their entire lives, 70-year-olds with the same average blood pressure as 16-year-olds. Now, Africa, China, vastly different diets, but what they shared in common is that they were plant-based day-to-day, with meat only eaten on special occasions. Now, why do we think it's the plant-based nature of their diets that was so protective? Because in the Western world, as the American Heart Association has pointed out, the only folks really getting it down that low were those eating strictly plant-based diets, coming in at about 110/65. This is the largest study of those eating plant-based diets. To date, 89,000 Californians, comparing non-vegetarians to so-called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians, eating meat more on a weekly basis than a daily basis, compared to those who eat no meat except fish, compared to those who eat no meat at all, compared to those who eat no meat, eggs, or dairy. Now, this was an Adventist study, so even the non-vegetarians didn't eat a lot of meat, and they tended to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, and exercised, and, not smoke. And so even compared to a group of relatively healthy meat eaters, there appeared to be a stepwise drop in hypertension rates as people ate more and more plant-based. Same thing with diabetes and obesity. So yes, we can wipe out most of our risk eating strictly plant-based, but it's not all or nothing. It's not black or white. Any movement along this spectrum towards eating healthier can accrue significant health benefits. You can show this experimentally. You take vegetarians, you give them meat and pay them enough to eat it, and their blood pressures go up. Or you remove meat from people's diets and blood pressures go down in just 7 days. And this is after the vast majority reduced or stopped their blood pressure medications completely. They had to stop their medications. Once you treat the cause, once you eliminate the disease, you can't be on blood pressure pills with normal blood pressure. You can drop your pressures too low, get dizzy, fall over, hurt yourself. So your doctor has to pull you off the pills. Lower pressures on fewer drugs. That's the power of plants. So, does the American Heart Association recommend a no-meat diet? No, they recommend a low-meat diet, the so-called DASH diet. Why not completely plant-based? When the DASH diet was being created, were they just not aware of this landmark research done by Harvard's Frank Sachs? No, they were aware. The chair of the design committee that came up with the DASH diet was Frank Sachs. See, the DASH diet was explicitly designed with the number one goal of capturing the blood pressure lowering benefits of a vegetarian diet, yet contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general population. They didn't think the public could handle the truth. Now, in their defense, you can see what they were thinking. I mean, just like drugs never work unless you actually take them, diets never work unless you actually eat them. So they're like, look, no one's going to eat strictly plant-based. So if they soft-pedaled the message and came up with some kind of compromise diet, then maybe on a population scale they'd do more good. Okay, tell that to the 1,000 American families a day that lose a loved one to high blood pressure. Maybe it's time to start telling the American public the truth.
So you want some tips on how to live longer? Apparently, if you take a page out of the book of the Seventh-day Adventists, you might get a good idea about how to do this. So a scientist and researcher named Dan Buttner has spent years researching how to live longer. So scientists have long known that there are certain parts of the world, certain towns and cities, where people live remarkably longer than the average. Some of those include Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, Japan, and they're just beginning to figure out how that works. Now, in the United States, the Seventh-day Adventists live an average of 10 years longer than the average American life expectancy of about 79 years. So want to know their secrets? Two things: rest and eat your vegetables. So Seventh-day Adventists take their entire Sabbath, they take it very seriously. They do no work, they rest, and they recharge, and that's a way of life. They also eat a plant-based diet, and they have a social network within their religious community that reinforces the right behavior. So apparently about 84% of healthcare dollars are spent because of bad food choices, inactivity, and unmanaged stress. And the reason why these Seventh-day Adventists are doing so well and living so long is because they seem to manage all of those things. So it's very simple, folks. Take a page out of their book. If you want to live longer, eat better, get active, and manage your stress. It's that simple, only on The Richard Fowler Show. Don't forget to subscribe.
A little while ago, we made a video explaining the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses, and if you didn't see it, you can find a link in the description below. Now, it turns out a lot of people also want to know what Seventh-day Adventists believe. They know a little bit about the Adventists, but not too much. And it turns out they're a religion that's very similar to conservative Christianity. You know, they believe in creationism, they oppose LGBT rights, etc. But there are some things that make them unique. Saturday is their holy day. Most Christians tend to think of Sunday as kind of the day to rest, but Seventh-day Adventists insist that it's Saturday. And screw those heretics who disagree. Remember how God created the universe in 6 days and then rested on the seventh? Well, that day was a Saturday. They believe Jesus is coming back soon. Not like in our lifetime soon, but like now soon. The word they use is imminent, and only the people who rest on Saturdays will be saved. They don't believe that you're going to heaven when you die. The only way anyone's going to heaven is after Jesus comes back during his second coming. What happens if you die before that happens? Well, then I guess you just have to sit unconscious in your grave until he does return, which I hear should be happening any day now. They believe bad people don't go to hell. Oh no, it's much worse. They're just gonna be permanently destroyed. Because God grants us eternal life. So if you don't accept God, you don't get the joy of burning in hell for eternity. When Jesus comes back, which is really soon, God's gonna commit the biggest act of genocide you have ever seen. Which also means, by the way, that Seventh-day Adventists don't believe in hell, because no one could actually end up there. They believe God is going to determine your fate through a process known as investigative judgment. Basically, until the time when Jesus comes back, which is any day now, God is examining your life to decide what to do with you in the afterlife. It's not enough that you believe in him, you also have to live your life in accordance with his rules. God is always judging you. Seventh-day Adventists are health nuts, which actually doesn't sound like such a bad thing. They abstain from alcohol and tobacco, and coffee, and soda, and unclean meats like pork, because they believe those things defile your soul. So, not a bad idea, but really weird reasoning. Their prophet was a woman, Ellen G. White. So that's different, and kind of cool in a way, but that's really the only way she's different. She saw visions in 1844, and the religion just kind of sprang from there. These visions came after she suffered a traumatic brain injury as a child, and after she came out of a long coma, which many people believe led to epileptic seizures. But, I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. Seventh-day Adventists think the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon, and the Pope is the Antichrist. They think less of the Catholic Church than most atheists do. They think masturbation is really horrible. Like, really horrible. Like, John Harvey Kellogg was an Adventist who created cornflakes hoping that kids who ate them wouldn't want to touch themselves anymore. Dr. Ben Carson, one of the Republicans vying for the Republican nomination for president, happens to be a Seventh-day Adventist. So he believes this stuff. I have to say though, given the other things I've heard him say so far, these beliefs are probably the most sensible ones he has. My name is Hemant Mehta, and I write at friendlyatheist.com. What do you want to see a video about? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to check it out.